Well, I guess this is as good a place to start as any. Looking into this camera after a long life, I wonder where I'm going to start. But as the tome says, start at the beginning. Man, this is hard. It's a lot harder than I thought it would ever be. One of the things that I think is great about technology is it's going to allow us to do something that's never been done before in recorded history, and that is to record our history for our children. I think that it's going to be a wonderful thing for families to look back maybe in 25, 50, 100, 200 years and see their ancestors talking about their lives. And letting the people that come after, letting our children and our grandchildren know where we came from, what our lives were like, a first-hand account. And I know it's not always an easy thing for people to do, to try to look into a camera and to tell the truth about their lives. Not only the good things, but the not so good things that have happened to us, the things, though, that make us who we are. And, there are things in my life that I'm so very proud of, and there are a lot of things in my life I'm not so proud of. There are a lot of things that I question, a lot of decisions that I've questioned in my life. And I want people to, and I hope that people will, learn from not only the things that I've done, but the decisions that I've made. I hope that people can learn to make decisions based on what they see here and hear here. I know I wasn't able to, when people would tell me, well, it's not always a good path to go down, blah, blah, blah. And I had to find out for myself. And I think a lot of people do, though. I think a lot of people have to go down their own paths in order to find out that maybe they're making a mistake. My problem was, however, that I kept making the same mistakes over and over and over and over. And that's something you can't do and expect to have a fulfilling, positive life. Anyway, on a more positive note, I'd like to start at the beginning. My name's Randolph Lee Simmons Jr. I was born in December of 1957 on the 22nd, on a very cold winter's night in Greeley, Colorado, which is just kind of, I guess it would be northeast of Denver, out on the prairie. My mother and father were in college at the time. My father's name was Randolph Lee Simmons Sr., and my mother was June Elizabeth Furnell. They met in college. My father was in the service at the time. My mother was pursuing a degree in music. And I was born. And I've thought about that a lot. I've thought about where I was born and the stories I've been told about, being born in a cold winter. And back then, of course, things were a lot different. I mean, you didn't have 911. I remember my mother telling me I almost died one night. She couldn't get me to breathe, and she had to take me outside. And as soon as I hit that cold Colorado air, it brought me right back to life. So, that's a little anecdotal thing that has been floated around the family. From there, we moved to Denver. Actually, no, we moved to Colorado Springs, if I remember correctly. And I think I lived in Colorado Springs on and off, and with my grandmother and grandfather in Denver until I was about 3 years old. My grandmother was a housewife, and my grandfather, George Furnell, my grandmother's name was Hilda, my grandfather's name was George, and my grandfather owned 3 paint stores called the Paint Spot in Denver, Colorado. And he had come from a family in New York City, a family of immigrants, and decided to go out west to Denver. My grandmother left her home outside of Kansas City, and on a buckboard went to Denver also with her sister Hilda Furnell, or her sister Hazel. Her name was Hilda. So I was living on and off with my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother. You know, she was in college trying to get her degree, and my grandmother and grandfather would take care of me. I can remember my grandfather taking me to a little bar down in Denver off of the Valley Highway called Jim's Place on Spear Boulevard, what is now Spear Boulevard, and I-25, I believe, or I-24, whichever one it is. And up until I was about 5 years old, and then we moved into a home on Arapahoe Road, or off of Arapahoe Road, in Denver, and it was my father's house, the first house he'd bought. I think he paid about $15,000 or $20,000 for it. It was a little 3-bedroom on Ulster Circle. And I can't remember the address. I'll try to get that at a later date to put it on. And as I do these videos, each one is going to be less than 10 minutes on length, so I can post them on my site on YouTube. And previous to that, we also lived in Wheat Ridge in a little apartment, and I can remember living there with my uncles who lived in the garage, Roy and Albert Simmons. And it was a very crowded little household, to say the least. And I still have memories of being about 3 or 4 years old and pushing my little brother Danny and Deanne, the twins, in their little side-by-side stroller down the street. So, and we lived there with my mother and father, my grandmother occasionally, my uncles, and my brother David, and the twins, Deanne and Danny. And I hope someday they take it upon themselves to make a video of their lives. And I'll try to let you know as we go through this process as much as I can about them. So that was kind of the beginning of my life. That's where things began. We're in Denver, and I can remember going to kindergarten at Greenwood Elementary School, in first grade, second grade, third grade. I believe my third grade teacher's name was Mrs. Crabtree. I think my second grade teacher's name was Mrs. Peterson, Carrie Peterson. And those were good years. Growing up in Denver, on the outskirts of Denver, when it was a population of probably less than 500,000 or so, those were good times. Denver was a beautiful city, nestled right, next to the Rockies, and Colorado was a gorgeous town. Denver was a gorgeous town at that time. It wasn't as big as it is now. Colorado hadn't become... it was still kind of the Wild West out there. It was still frontier land, and a lot of people lived back east and hadn't immigrated yet. So, that's really the first part of my life. And the things that happened on Ulster Circle were... even though I didn't know it at the time, were things that were going to go on to shape the rest of my life.